What binds a family together? Is it love that makes us share our lives and dreams? Is it a duty that keeps us united through thick and thin? Or is it simply the shared blood that connects us? When those bonds break, when anger and resentment seep into the fabric of a family, how far can someone be pushed before the unthinkable happens? Imagine a day that was supposed to be filled with joy and togetherness, turning into a scene of unimaginable horror. On Easter Sunday in 1975, what began as a day for celebrating family and traditions became the backdrop for a chilling tragedy. How does a person reach such a dark and horrifying point? What could drive someone to annihilate the very people they were meant to love and protect? As the echoes of laughter and the warmth of family gatherings fade into the background, we are left grappling with the haunting reality of such an event. What happens when those we trust the most become our greatest threat? The answers to these questions might be as complex and layered as the tragedy itself, but understanding them could shed light on the darkest corners of human emotion and connection. James Urban Ruppert was born on March 29, 1934, in Hamilton, Ohio, into what seemed like a normal, middle-class family. But from the very start, life wasn't exactly kind to him. When you look at photos of him as a child, you can see a quiet boy, small for his age, with dark hair and a bit of a sad look in his eyes. Maybe it was just the way things were back then. People didn't really talk about their feelings. They didn't ask kids how they were doing deep down. And maybe that's where it all started for James. Growing up, James wasn't like other kids. He was shy, almost painfully so, and he always seemed a little out of place. His father, Leonard Ruppert, was strict and harsh, with a temper that left the family walking on eggshells around him. He wasn't abusive, but he was the kind of man who expected things to be done his way, no questions asked. He wanted James to be strong, to live up to some ideal of what a man should be. But James wasn't like that. He wasn't good with sports, wasn't outgoing, and struggled with the pressure that came from his father's constant criticism. Nothing James did ever seemed to be enough. His brother, Leonard Jr., was the golden boy. Everything came easy for him. Good looks, athleticism, charm. Leonard Jr. was everything their father wanted in a son, while James was, well, James. The forgotten one, the overlooked one. He kept to himself, spending most of his time alone, reading or tinkering with small gadgets. He was smart, no doubt about that, but his intelligence didn't shine in a way that would make his father proud. It just made him feel more distant from the family. But then, when James was 12 years old, tragedy struck. His father passed away suddenly, due to tuberculosis, leaving the family in disarray. Now, most people would think that losing a strict father might have lifted a weight off young James's shoulders, but that wasn't the case. Instead, it left a void, a deep, hollow space where any hope of approval had once been. And with his father gone, James was left under the thumb of his mother, Charity, and his brother. Charity was a strong woman, but she had her way of controlling the household. She was never cruel, but she was demanding, overbearing, and never shy about reminding James how much of a disappointment he was compared to Leonard Jr. As James grew into his teenage years, the isolation only deepened. His brother thrived, popular in school, successful in sports, and eventually Leonard Jr. even started dating. And here's where things get even more heartbreaking. Leonard Jr. didn't just date anyone. He ended up with James's ex-girlfriend, the one person James had feelings for, taken by the brother who had already overshadowed him his whole life. That had to sting. But being James, he didn't lash out. He didn't say anything. He just bottled it all up like he always did. That's the thing about James. He was a master at keeping everything inside. Every little hurt, every disappointment, every slight. It all went somewhere. But you can only hold so much pain before it starts to crack. And for James, those cracks started to show in subtle ways. He became even more withdrawn, barely speaking to his family. He had dreams and ambitions even, but nothing ever seemed to work out. College didn't go well, jobs didn't stick, and he was always living under the shadow of his perfect brother and a mother who made sure he knew it. By the time he was in his 20s, James started to unravel. He couldn't keep a job for long, bouncing from one thing to another, and his social life? Well, there wasn't much of one. He never really fit in anywhere, never made many friends, and any sense of self-worth he had was slowly slipping away. Leonard Jr., on the other hand, was doing just fine. He married James's ex-girlfriend and started a family, and they all lived nearby, a constant reminder of everything James didn't have. The bitterness, the resentment, it was all building, slowly, quietly, but it was there. And then, to make matters worse, James moved back in with his mother. A grown man, well into his 30s, forced to live under the same roof with the person who made him feel like a failure his entire life. Day after day, stuck in that house, with his mother constantly belittling him, constantly reminding him of how Leonard Jr. was so much better. It's no wonder he started to drink. It started small, like it does for most people. A beer here, a drink there, just to take the edge off. But before long, drinking became the only thing that made James feel okay. He wasn't just a casual drinker. It became a crutch, something to numb the pain he couldn't express. And the more he drank, the angrier he became. But it wasn't the kind of anger you show on the outside. It was the kind of anger that festers inside, the kind that builds over years and years until it's all-consuming. His mother saw it too. Charity often told people that James was acting strange, that he was unstable, but no one really paid attention. People knew James had his problems, but they didn't think he was dangerous. Maybe they thought he was just lost, a man who couldn't quite get his life together. But James wasn't just lost. He was sinking fast. By the time James hit his 40s, he was a shell of the person he could have been. All those years of being told he wasn't good enough, of watching his brother succeed while he failed, it was too much. He had no real job, no family of his own, no future. And now all he had left was alcohol and an overwhelming, crushing rage that had been quietly simmering beneath the surface for decades. James didn't explode all at once. It was a slow burn, a long, torturous descent into a place so dark that even he probably didn't see what was coming. He was drinking heavily, more than ever before, and he was angry. At his mother, at his brother, at the life he never had. And yet, no one seemed to notice just how close he was to the edge. The sadness in James's story isn't just about what happened to him. It's about what could have been. If things had been different, if someone had paid attention, maybe he wouldn't have ended up where he did. But instead, everything kept building. The loneliness, the bitterness, the anger, until there was no turning back. What happened next? Well, it's almost unimaginable, but that's the thing about James. No one ever saw it coming. But the truth is, maybe it was always coming. All those years of pain, of resentment, of being cast aside, they were about to explode in a way that no one could have ever predicted. So just about a month before everything fell apart, James started doing something that should have raised some serious red flags. He went into a store looking to buy more ammunition, which wasn't all that unusual for him. But this time, he had a different request. He inquired about silencers for his weapons. James was already known to be a bit off, but this was just another sign that something inside him was getting darker. By this point, James was sinking fast. His mental health had taken a nosedive. It was like he was nearing a breaking point, and anyone who saw him around this time could tell something wasn't right. He wasn't just a guy down on his luck anymore. There was this heaviness around him, like he was carrying a weight so big that he couldn't hold it together much longer. On March 29, 1975, his 41st birthday, James was seen down by the Great Miami River, not celebrating, not spending time with family. No, he was there by himself, doing target practice with his .22 caliber pistol and rifle, just shooting tin cans along the riverbank. It's almost eerie and upsetting to think about it now, you know? How he spent his birthday? Alone, aiming tin cans like he was preparing for something bigger. That same night, James followed his usual routine. He went out to his favorite bar, the 19th Hole Cocktail Lounge. He was a regular there. It was his escape, where he could drink and try to forget about his problems, if only for a few hours. That night, he ended up talking with one of the employees, a woman named Wanda Bishop. She was 28 years old and they'd talked before. But this time was different. You could just tell. He told her he was fed up and frustrated with his mother's constant demands and the fact that she was threatening to kick him out of the house. The pressure was unbearable. His mother had been pushing him to pay rent, saying that if he could afford to drink every night, then he could afford to help out more at home. And that really got to him. It was like she was driving a wedge deeper and deeper into his already fragile mind. As James sat there, drinking and venting, he told Wanda that he needed to solve the problem. Now, Wanda didn't think too much of it at the time. Maybe she figured he was just blowing off steam like people often do after a few drinks. But looking back, that phrase, solve the problem, was haunting. He didn't say it like a joke or in passing. He meant it. After some time, James left the bar. It was around 11 p.m. when he walked out the door, but the story didn't end there. No, he came back. Maybe he couldn't face going home. Maybe he needed more time to think. But when he walked back into the bar, Wanda was still there, and she asked him if he had solved his problem. His answer? No, not yet. That response, the way he said it, there was something chilling about it. Not yet. What did that even mean? It was like he was waiting for the right moment, for something to click in his mind before he could act. But Wanda, she didn't ask any more questions. James stayed there until closing time, 2:30 in the morning. The bar emptied out, the lights went off, and James headed home, just like he did every other night. But this wasn't just any other night. This was the night before everything would change forever. The night before the unimaginable. It was Easter Sunday, March 30th, 1975. A day that was supposed to be about family and celebration. Leonard Jr., along with his wife, Alma, had brought their 8 children over to the family house at 635 Minor Avenue for a nice Easter dinner. The kids, ranging from ages 4 to 17, were full of energy. They ran around outside searching for hidden Easter eggs on the front lawn, laughing and playing like kids do. But James was upstairs, sleeping off yet another night of heavy drinking. While the rest of his family spent the day together, James lay there, lost in whatever dark thoughts were swirling through his mind. Time passed quietly until around 4 p.m., when everything changed. James woke up, but instead of coming downstairs to join his family, to maybe have a meal or say a few words, he had something far more sinister in mind. Slowly, he gathered his weapons, a .357 Magnum, 2 .22 caliber handguns, and a .22 caliber rifle. He loaded them one by one, each click of the gun foreshadowing what was to come. Then, with all 4 weapons ready, James made his way downstairs. In the kitchen, Charity was busy preparing sloppy joes for dinner. Leonard Jr. and Alma were there too, talking and spending time with her. The children were in the living room, still enjoying their Easter Sunday, completely unaware of the horror. Without a word, James entered the kitchen. The first shot rang out, hitting Leonard Jr. right in the head. Alma barely had time to react before James turned the gun on her, shooting her down in the same instant. It was quick, almost methodical. Charity, in a desperate attempt to stop her son, lunged at James, but he shot her too. 1 bullet in the head, 2 in the chest. Just like that, the heart of the family was gone. But James didn't stop there. He went after the children. David was just 11 years old, Teresa only 9, and Carol 13. They had no time to run, no time to understand what was happening. One by one, James shot them all. Then with cold precision, James turned the corner into the living room. The rest of the children were there. Anne, Leonard III, Michael, Thomas, and little John, just 4 years old, all in one room. James took them out one by one, not leaving anyone behind. He shot each of them, making sure none survived. For good measure, he shot many of them in the head again, as if ensuring there would be no escape, no survival. The entire massacre lasted less than 5 minutes. In that short, horrifying span of time, James wiped out his entire family. 12 lives, all taken in cold blood. The house was disturbingly quiet. The only sign of struggle was a single overturned waste paper bin. No one had a chance. By the time it was over, James had done the unimaginable. The people closest to him, the ones he grew up with, the ones he should have loved, were all gone. The house that had just moments ago been filled with joy was now eerily quiet. Easter baskets sat untouched on the table. The smell of food hung in the air, but there would be no dinner. The eggs the children had hunted earlier remained uneaten, forgotten. The once lively home was now a graveyard. No more laughter, no more family, just the aftermath of an unspeakable crime. Blood, shock, and silence were all that remained. The house stood still, haunted by the horror of what had just happened. In just a few short minutes, everything had changed, forever. Now, if you're like us, someone who dives deep into these tragic, complex cases, you're not just watching, you're piecing together the clues, questioning motives, and trying to understand the why behind the what. By subscribing to our channel, you'll be helping us grow, which means we can continue bringing you more in-depth stories just like this one. So go ahead, lock in that subscribe button like it's your biggest lead, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. It's your inside tip-off so you never miss a crucial piece of another puzzle. Now let's go back to the story. After everything was said and done, after the unimaginable horror that took place in that house, James Ruppert didn't run. He didn't panic or try to escape. Instead, he stayed there, among the bodies of his family members, for 3 long hours. 3 hours of silence after the chaos. And when he finally made a move, it wasn't out of regret or fear. It was calm, almost too calm. At around 7 p.m., James picked up the phone and in a flat, emotionless voice told the police, "There's been a shooting." That's it. No panic in his voice. No sign that he had just done something horrifying. He hung up and quietly waited by the front door for the authorities to arrive. No pacing, no tears, just waiting, as if what he had done hadn't even registered yet. Or maybe he just didn't care. When the police got to the house, they weren't prepared for what they would find. They knew James. Everyone did. By all accounts, the Rupperts were a good, decent family. Nobody would have ever guessed James was capable of violence, let alone something this horrific. He wasn't the type, people thought. He kept to himself, sure, but violence? No way. Yet here he was, standing calmly inside the house, the entire family he had grown up with now gone, and blood everywhere. The scene was so gruesome that County Prosecutor John Holcomb, after viewing it, said there was so much blood on the first floor that it was literally dripping through the floorboards into the basement. James had fired 35 rounds in total, and all 4 of his weapons were found at the scene. He didn't even try to hide them. James was arrested that same day and charged with 11 counts of aggravated homicide. But when the police tried to question him, he wouldn't cooperate. He refused to answer any of their questions, giving them nothing. The only thing that was clear to the authorities? James was going to plead insanity. That was his defense. The entire town of Hamilton was in shock. How could something like this happen? How could someone they knew for so long, someone who seemed so ordinary, commit such an unthinkable crime? People were confused, hurt, and scared. The Rupperts had seemed like any other family, nice, quiet, and hardworking. Now they were gone, all of them buried together in Arlington Memorial Gardens in Cincinnati, Ohio. And as for James, his calmness only made it worse. It wasn't just the massacre itself that horrified people. It was the eerie detachment he showed afterward, as if it didn't even matter to him. It was almost like he was just another person in the town, going about his day. But he wasn't. And now everyone knew it. The trial of James Ruppert was as complicated and emotionally charged as the massacre itself. It all began in Hamilton, Ohio, in June 1975. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with the weight of the 11 lives lost. A 3-judge panel found James guilty of all counts, 11 murders in total, and sentenced him to life in prison on July 3rd. But then, just when it seemed like justice might be served, a twist. A mistrial was declared. Therefore, the judges didn't know whether their decision had to be unanimous or if a majority rule would suffice. As if the case wasn't already tangled enough, it was decided that the retrial would be held in Findlay, Ohio, 125 miles away. The move was made to ensure a fair trial, as it was believed that the people of Hamilton might not be able to separate their emotions from the evidence. The second trial began on July 23, 1975. This time, the courtroom drama escalated. Prosecutors presented evidence that painted a chilling picture of James's state of mind. They revealed how he had been seen practicing target shooting and inquiring about silencers for his weapons. Witnesses also testified about James's frustrations, particularly his complaints about his mother's expectations and his own financial problems. These insights made it clear that Ruppert was troubled, but the question remained, how troubled? In July 1975, James received 11 consecutive life sentences. The community was still grappling with the brutality of the massacre and trying to understand how someone could commit such horrific acts. But the story didn't end there. In 1982, James's case took another dramatic turn. The defense attorney, Hugh D. Holbrook, convinced that James was insane, personally funded a team of psychiatrists and psychologists from across the country to evaluate his client. Therefore, on July 23, 1982, another three-judge panel found James guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, his mother and brother. However, he was found not guilty because of insanity on the other 9 counts. This legal roller coaster was a reflection of the deep, unsettling questions that haunted everyone involved. Was James driven by sheer hatred, or was he spiraling into madness? The complexity of his trials seemed almost as chaotic as the crime itself. During the time of his crimes, capital punishment had been suspended in the United States due to the Supreme Court's decision in Furman v. Georgia. This meant James couldn't face the death penalty, no matter how heinous his actions. On July 30, 1982, at age 48, James began serving his life sentence at the Franklin Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio. Over the years, he faced multiple parole hearings, but his requests for release were consistently denied. Each time, the parole board made it clear, James was not fit for release. They cited his negative institutional conduct, failure to complete recommended programs, and strong community objections. In 2015, the Allen Oakwood Correctional Institution Parole Board released a statement reinforcing their decision. They noted James's lack of progress and the strong opposition from the community. The board concluded that releasing him would not serve justice. James's next chance for parole was set for April 2025, when he would have been 91 years old. But on June 4, 2022, at the age of 88, James's story came to an end. He died from natural causes at the Franklin Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio, closing a dark chapter in the history of the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction. So here's where we are. James Ruppert remains a figure of intense scrutiny and emotional turmoil. He was convicted of killing his mother and brother, while found insane for the other 9 murders. The legal battles only added to the community's confusion and pain. The question is, what turns love into hate? What causes someone to cross that terrible line between anger and destruction? The Easter Sunday massacre forces us to confront these difficult questions. It's not just about the legal complexities or the shocking brutality of the crime. It's about understanding what drives a person to destroy their own family. Could it have been prevented? Was there something more that could have been done to help him before it reached such a devastating point? In the end, we're left with these haunting reflections. Can we ever truly grasp what drives someone to commit such extreme acts of violence? And as we ponder this, we must consider the tragic reality of how family, love, and resentment can sometimes blend into something so dark and destructive. Hey, armchair detectives, what do you think about this tragedy? Do you think it was preventable? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. And did you uncover that subscribe button already? Be careful that you don't accidentally trip over that notification bell. It might just tip you off on our next video. Keep sleuthing, and until next time.